Okay, so hi guys, uh, this is Arnav, and so firstly I want to thank Mehek for actually calling me for the session. So I'm really excited to talk to you guys since it's my very own society. I was one of the co-founders of the society. I was the founding co-president with Daisy. So in today's session we'll actually discuss about a few topics. So I had a few questions that I asked Mehek to collect, and so I'll begin with a few questions that were common in most of your queries. And after that, I think we can make this like an interactive session wherein you can maybe ask questions in the chat, or you can. I think we can open the mic for some people and they can ask the questions, right? So the first question I want to start with is actually so one of the common questions was how to start for someone who is a beginner or who has a medium experience with programming. So, guys, in this actually, when you're new to the scene, I think if you're a beginner and you have a lot of interest in, if you want to go into software development, right? So the first thing that you need to do right now is actually get clear with your fundamentals and your basics. So a mistake that many people do is actually they think that they had computer science as a subject in 11th and 12th, or even some people have computer science from 6th to 12th onwards, 6th onwards to up to 12th. So they think that they have a good understanding of what the requirements of, you can say, software development, or basically C++ programming or fundamentals are, or for that matter any language. So I think there's a fallacy in that, because the concepts that you need to know and the level of understanding for those concepts that you need in your college, so particularly for the interviews and for competitive programming, it's very different from what you guys have done in your school. So a good way to start if you're a beginner is, even if you have a little bit of knowledge of data structures and algorithms, is to actually, so there are two ways, right? One is that you can go for a course. So for that there are many institutes like Coding Blocks, Coding Ninjas, or even Geeks for Geeks for that matter. It's now opening a lot of courses. So what I recommend is actually going through a course with any of these institutes that you like. I personally prefer Coding Blocks, so I have a long association with Coding Blocks. So and they are offering a lot of around 55% discount right now. So that's a good place to start. Otherwise, you can go with Coding Ninjas or Geeks for Geeks, as you please. So a good thing I think will be to basically take a course from these institutes, because they have a very structured approach to all the basic DSs and DS and algo that you need. So they will actually help you with the basic DS algo, and they will also set up, like they have a good setup of the course that you should follow, like which data structure should be done first, then what should follow, and they have a good bifurcation of how you should progress. So I think taking a course is a good way. Uh, the only thing that it offers above from, let's say, if you go by your own, so if you want to learn from YouTube tutorials, or by going through the questions yourself by practice. So the advantage of these institutes is that if you go by a guerrilla approach, you will actually end up spending, I guess, 6 to 9 months. So around 6 to 9 months to get a good hold of what the basics in C++ or Java, whatever your language is, what the basics are. So it will take a lot of time. So if you go through these institutes, they will actually give you a good setup, and most of the courses last for as long as 30 months, 3 months, sorry. So in those 3 months, you can actually go through a lot of the course, and you will have a very good understanding of the basics. So I personally prefer these courses, but if you think that they are a little pricey, so then maybe you can go through the online resources. And although it might take time, but it's not. I mean, it does compare well. So I've seen people do coding by themselves, so they learn themselves, and they are great coders today. But I personally prefer courses, so it depends on the person, right? So that is one thing. Now that was for beginners. If now for those who have, you can say, a medium level experience, that was one of the questions that was asked a lot. So for those people, I think what you can do right now is, firstly, these websites, right, Coding Blocks or Geeks for Geeks and Coding Ninjas. So on their platforms, they have a good very selection of questions that you can do. So they have very good bifurcation of questions based on data structures, algorithms, and they're categorized well. So if you go there, you can solve their questions. For coding blocks, I know you can actually solve their questions without even joining their courses. So this is their website is hack.codingblocks.com. So if you go there, you can actually solve the course questions without support from anyone, and so that's a good practice. And if not that, then you can go to Geeks for Geeks, and there also you have the questions, right? So you have a lot of questions that you can do. Now, how to approach those questions? So for those questions, I think what you need to do is for a good understanding of how you need to basically progress, you should start with, I think, first is always your arrays, because whatever queues, so whatever data structure that you have, let's say strings, and for that matter, maps, hash maps, queues, stacks, anything, it is somewhat or somewhere basically an array. It is an improvisation of an array to perform certain functions. So you need to get a good hold of arrays. So firstly, go there and try to solve all the questions based on arrays. For arrays, I believe every question that is possible, you should solve it on these platforms. Then moving on to the other kind of array, so even strings are a form of array, and there are a lot of questions based on arrays only. So on strings in competitive programming and even in interviews, predominantly in interviews. So for that matter, I think after arrays, you should move on to strings, and after that, you have a plethora of options like all the DS and algo. So for each DS and algo, I recommend that you solve at least 10 questions on each topic, and then move ahead. So don't skip that much hard work. So putting in that much effort for at least solving 10 questions on each topic is necessary. And after you're done with this, you can actually, so this is for medium level coders. So after you're done with this, even after you have done a course or anything, I recommend that you do this once. And after that, you can move on to competitive programming. So for competitive programming, the best site to begin with is, I think, CodeChef. And in CodeChef also, so I recommend only the long format, because the short format is not actually suited for people who are beginners, or even I've seen advanced level coders fail at the short contest. So they actually recommend long contest because you have a lot of time to form an understanding and a solution for a question, which is good for a beginner, because during the time that you have to solve a question, you actually go ahead and try to research on a lot of topics. So even if you don't solve the questions, you'll end up learning a lot. So that's a good starting curve for your learning. So try to go to CodeChef and start solving long challenges. And with that, what you can do is actually there's another great website. So it is Codeforces. So a lot of times I get asked this question that whether I should start with Codeforces, or like I can do Codeforces along with CodeChef. So the basic idea behind CodeChef is getting you a good understanding and a good practice of these basic DS and algo. So if you feel like you don't need that, or you don't have enough time to invest in this, you can actually directly go to Codeforces. So Codeforces is the best platform for competitive programming from an interview point of view for the FANG or GAFAM companies. I hope you guys know this. So FANG is basically Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and Netflix and Google, and GAFAM is another acronym for Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, and GAFAM. Okay, so Facebook, right? So for these companies, I think the best platform will be Codeforces only, because in that you have a platform wherein you need to solve up to 5 questions of increasing difficulties in just 2 hours. So that format is actually very useful, because when you sit for interviews, you actually need to solve 2 or 3 questions in a matter of an hour or an hour and a half. So these questions also are mostly based on initial level questions. So if anyone is familiar with Codeforces, there are levels, there are ratings. So it starts from as low as, I think, 1,000 up to, it goes up to 3,300 something. So their levels progress in such a way that you will see there is a similarity between the level in these questions and the level of increment in each subsequent questions, and the questions that you will find in interviews. So I think, and most of the questions in initial levels are actually based on strings and arrays, or slight optimizations using stack and queue or something, or sex or hash map. So because of that, I think it's a good platform to begin with. And if you think that you don't want to go to CodeChef, or you think you don't need CodeChef for that matter, you can directly go with CodeForces. So one advice I want to give anyone who is joining these platforms is that it might be a little difficult to start. It gets a little discouraging initially because you'll see that many people, for that matter, will solve around 2 to 3 questions out of 6, but you will solve like one question or maybe not even one. So I'll tell you just a small incident. After hitting 6-star rating on CodeChef, I went to CodeForces, and on CodeForces, in my first competition, I solved only one question out of 6, and a lot of my flatmates who actually were 5-star or 4-star on CodeChef, they actually solved three questions, three, or you can say three and a half in a sense. So that was really discouraging. But the key to sticking to these platforms or learning on these platforms is that you need to be consistent and you need to work hard. So this is one aspect of competitive programming that I want to discuss as well, is that you need to stick to what you're doing. You need to be hard, you need to work hard, and you cannot give up. If you give up in the first few competitions, then you won't be able to progress. It's all about hard work. And okay, so Chehek is saying the video is not visible. Is anyone else facing this issue, guys? Can you please let me know? Okay, Chehek, I think the issue is from your side, so maybe you can check your internet connection. Okay, so okay, so in these questions, so basically, you need to stick to these platforms, right? So stick as much as you can, try hard, and the important thing that makes a difference between the level of understanding between any two people on this platform is that after each competition, you have a tutorial that comes up. So what many people do is that they think, okay, I solved 3 questions. After that, they're done with the contest and they move on to the next one. So the issue with this approach is that you're not learning. You are actually applying what you have learned and you're not trying to learn more. So the benefit of these platforms is that you can practice regularly and try to learn more. Now to achieve that, what you need to do is after each contest, go back to those tutorials. So for the questions that you were able to solve and the questions that you were not able to solve. So for both those type of questions, I want you guys to actually go through the tutorial and see. So for the questions that you were not able to solve, you will see that there was something in the approach or something different in terms of data structure or algorithm that you can learn. So that is the learning that you can get from the questions that you were not able to solve. So after you get that, try to solve 2 to 3 meetings on that topic. And for the questions that you were able to solve, it often happens. It happens with me as well that you thought of an approach that works in n square or n log n, but the question could have been solved in lower time complexity. So these platforms actually give you an opportunity to see those approaches as well. So I think that's the benefit of these tutorials and these platforms. It's not only to show how good you are at coding, it's actually, so the main use of these platforms is incremental learning. So that's what you guys need to focus on. So I think this was a lot of the queries that were there on this topic. And so the next question is actually dealing with failures in competitive programming. Okay, so that's been discussed already. And okay, after that, I think another question was the skills in demand. Okay, so a lot of people asked about data science and competitive programming. So, guys, something interesting happened in the last few years. So, up till 2012 and a little bit to 2000 and a little bit from 2012 to 2016, there was a lack of people in data science. So at that point, the scope of data science, I think, was a lot more than your average software developer. But as happens with any other field, who gets a lot of, you can say, salary, draws a lot of attention. So after 2012 and up to 2016, many people, and especially Indians actually, so they went into this field of data science, and they went to basically, you can say, institutes in US or for that matter, any good institutes that are available around the globe. So they went for these data science courses, and so primarily Indians and many other people flooded this data science field. Now, because of that, the availability of data scientists and software developers is now okay. So primarily data scientists. The initial high salaries that were being offered for data science was because there were not enough trained data scientists. But now what has happened is that there are enough people to actually fulfill the demand of data scientists, or there is so the number of people required in data science, and so it's all about supply demand, right? So the supply demand of data science has actually matched up, or is like what the industry was looking for. So the supernormal salaries that were there in data science earlier are no longer there. So sorry to break it to those guys who were spending a lot of time in data science. So I'm not saying there's not scope, but the earlier you can say exaggeration about the salary and scope of data science has now gone down. So you can actually even if you work as a software developer, you can still fetch as much as a data scientist. So the speciality about data science is, in my opinion, gone right now, and even the scope of data scientists. So in India, if you look at the salaries of data scientists, they are up to, you can say the starting level is actually 12 lakhs. So you will be surprised. I actually looked into the stats for data scientists, and they start from 12 lakhs, and they go up to 20 lakhs for beginners in companies. While the salaries for software developers actually go from so for good companies they go from, you can say, 12 lakhs to up to 30 to 40 lakhs even for graduates. So for that matter, I think data science, if you love data science, if you want to get into data science, that's fine. But the hype around data science is now gone, and you can actually go ahead with normal software development and fetch as much as you would otherwise. And so the next question was getting into development. All right. So there are two parallels that go along in computer science branch. You can say one is competitive programming. The other one is development. So development encompasses everything besides competitive programming. So that is basically your Android development, web development, IoT, blockchain, ML, AI, everything. So for development, I think guys, firstly, just like competitive programming, you need a good base or a good understanding. So the difference between development, so learning development and competitive programming is that you cannot just go through theory to learn development. You actually need to be hands-on with projects to have a good understanding about these topics or frameworks or whatever you are working on. So for that, there are two ways actually. So one is again going through the courses. So for I know actually I work with all these fields. So I have projects in ML, AI, web dev, Android, IoT, everything. So I actually prefer courses. It's my preference for going for courses instead of like free resources online. But even if you go for free resources online, I recommend that you guys actually take a free resource which has like proper structured approach to learning. So even if you're learning, let's say Android development on the web, you can find plenty of projects that will go from. So the basic project that you make is like a calculator. Going from that, you make something that can do. So it's a to-do list or something like that, and you keep on going forward, and you learn something like a basic implementation of a shopping list or something, or an e-commerce website. So while these projects are good, and you can search for these projects and go according to your comfort level, but I think the approach to learning with these projects is not very well structured. So you will find yourself. So there will be some issues at some points wherein some concepts will be used in some videos that you may not have heard of, and since they jump at you directly or unannounced, so basically you will find an issue grasping these projects. So I think there are two ways actually you can go about it. Is actually either go to a course. So again, recommending coding blocks to you guys. If not, then go to YouTube. There are plenty of resources available there, and in that take a course. So there are free courses, and even on these other websites like edX, Coursera, anything, if you can find a free resource, but that has a structured approach, so go for that. Now, even after you start with development, there are two ways to go about it. So the first one is actually going into open source development. So that is something that is talked about a lot. So people work on open source. So for those who don't know what open source development is, there are projects that are so a lot of projects like you can say Wikimedia. So I hope you guys have heard of it, Wikimedia, or something like an ML algorithm for detecting a disease or something like that. So these projects or the code for these projects is put online on GitHub, and on GitHub there is no sole owner of these projects. For that matter, even the Android operating system, it is not actually owned I mean, it's not the right term. I cannot say it is not owned or it is owned by Google, but it has been left open source online. There's a repository there, and people can contribute on Android. So in that way, a lot of the things that you see around you, like applications or ML algorithms or websites, so many of them are open source as well. So you can, after learning through the courses, you can actually go to these open source, you can say codes on GitHub or open source communities, and you can start contributing to them. So some things might seem a little like you might not be getting what I'm exactly telling you guys, but once you go to when once you start learning on these platforms or go to contribute on these platforms, you will see what I'm talking about. So when you go there, you will actually find yourself in a community wherein people are actually developing these applications. So you get to work on great stuff like so it's practically deployed stuff. People are actually using these products. So you will get to work with these products and contribute to these codes. So that is one way of looking into development. The other one is basically going freelance. So I don't personally prefer open source development. So that's my personal preference. I don't like open source development. I prefer to work on projects that I find interesting and like I can make from scratch. So that is the other way of going about with development. So you can actually see there are a lot of websites or Android applications, or for that matter, ML algorithms around you that you see and are working, but you think there is a scope of improvement or something that you can do differently that can improve the overall functioning. So for that matter, if you guys want to see, there is an Android application on Play Store called GForms. So it is G-FORMS. So I made an application for Google Forms because I saw that people were using the website and there was no application for Google Forms on Android. So I developed an application and it right now has 175,000 downloads, and it is a recurring source of income for me as well using ads. So I think if you guys want, you can actually go ahead and see the applications. I have 5 more applications on the Play Store. Even I don't think the application is functioning right now, but there was an application called DTV Resources. So until 3 to 2 years ago, it was functioning well because I was maintaining it. But right now, I gave it to some of my juniors who went to work on some other things, and I don't have the time to maintain the application. So it is not much in circulation right now. But I made that in my first year. So that was a good practical like experience for me, and I think that is the second way you can go about. If you think that open source is not for you, you can go and work on these projects independently. And so one advantage of open source, I'll say, is that many companies recognize open source development. So if you there is actually a track record. So when you contribute on open sources, it is actually usually on GitHub, and the contributions will show on your GitHub profile. And when you're sitting for a company interview or something, you can actually show them your GitHub profile, and they can actually see that you have worked on something practical, and it actually holds a lot of weightage. So I mean, that's another way to go about depending on your preferences. So that's how you can go about development, and that whatever I've said for Android, it applies to all other fields as well. So WebD, ML, IoT, blockchain, anything. So that's the way you can go about it. So all right. So we will now move on to company preparation. So I think most of you guys are from first year or second year, and the primary question being asked is, should I take up an internship? So guys, I think this is very important, and I think it's a great time to learn this, that internships don't hold that much importance, especially if you're in first or second year, because what matters later on is actually your experience and your mastery of your basic computer science fundamentals, programming fundamentals, and I think if you work on internships, so some internships have a great learning curve and they teach you a lot. But in my experiences, in my experience, most internships that you get in first year, second year are more or less exploitative. So they will actually make you work on some trivial thing, and although you'll maybe make up 5,000 rupees a month, that is not actually much. So although you may make 5,000 up to 10,000, you will work on something that is not actually helping you grow. I would instead recommend that you guys actually go ahead and work on improving your skills. So focus on skill development, because getting those 10,000 rupees for spending the entire month working on something compared to learning yourself, if you go to developing your own projects or like working on GitHub, open source, or competitive programming, uh, the value of the information or the knowledge that you gain at this time is exponentially more compared to those 10,000 rupees that you will get right now. Because I've seen that a difference of that 1 month of learning can bring about a difference of 4 to 5 lakhs in your joining salary. So, I mean, that's a big thing. When you see that your friends are joining at a salary of 15 lakhs and you're joining at a salary of 20 lakhs, those 5 lakhs are actually, you get those 5 lakhs and for each year. And even your increments on the salary are on that 5 lakhs, on that difference of 5 lakhs. It actually makes a lot of difference. So I think don't look at short-term goals, look at long-term goals. And instead of wasting your time with internships in your first or second year, try to focus more on working on things like competitive programming, or even if you want, so improve your soft skills. Do something meaningful. Don't run after money right now in your first or second year. Try to focus on developing your skills, and you will see that right now it may seem that a lot of your friends are doing internships, their resumes are full, and they are getting some money or something for 5,000, 10,000 rupees a month. But when you sit for placements, so I've actually seen this happen. When you sit for placements, you will see that those people, in some cases, I'll say, you'll see that while they fetch something like 15 lakhs or 12 lakhs in placements for from these IT companies, you will end up getting somewhere around. So on average, you will get something around 5 lakhs more than these guys. So focus on skill development and don't run after money so much. You will get this money. You will get exponential returns on your learnings right now. So focus on that. And okay, so company preparation. So for software development, guys, I'll say for company preparation, the best website is actually Geeks for Geeks. So the way you can prepare for a company is that, let's say you're preparing for Microsoft. So Microsoft, what you can do is actually you can go through the interviews that are put on GFG, and they have like a repository, like they have interviews up to 200 interviews for Microsoft, all the past interviews. So you will notice one thing common is that in all these interviews, the questions that were asked were more or less the same. So in, you can say, the past 10 years, the question bank that is asked in interviews has not changed much. So I don't know what Microsoft or these companies are thinking, why they are not changing the questions. But even people have not many people have caught on to this, or even if they do, they don't practice enough. So if you guys can actually go through all those 160 interviews, each interview has like one or two questions. So even not 160, if even if you go back like just 30 to 40 interviews and do questions per interview, you will see that you have 80 questions, and those 80 questions, if you can do those 80 questions, you will find yourself at a very distinct advantage compared to your peers, because most of the questions are actually these previous questions only. There's nothing new that is asked in the interviews. So that is one thing you can prepare for these product-based companies, you can say, in a good way. And the other website is actually LeetCode. So even in LeetCode, there is a bifurcation of questions based on the company that they appeared in. You don't need to buy premium for that. Many people recommend buying premium. So there's a premium subscription for LeetCode. But I think even if you go by solving these questions yourself, there are a list of um, you can say the questions that various that came in various companies. So you can find that on GitHub or something, and you can go on solving these questions yourself, and without buying the premium subscription. So just preparing for these interviews, using Geek for Geeks archives, the company placement questions, and lead code is actually enough for preparing for these product-based companies like Microsoft, Amazon. So what I have recommended right now, if you want, for Microsoft, for Amazon, and I think for a few more companies, so 5 to 6 more good companies which fall in the range of or have a reputation as good as you can say Microsoft or Amazon, have actually, if you go by preparing this motto that I gave you guys, so you will see that it's a good way for preparing for these interviews since most of the questions are repetitive. So that's one way, and other is basically if you're working on whatever website like GFG, LeetCode. So most of the questions, actually in interviews, there is focus on 4DS. Yeah. So the most important one is arrays. The next one is linked list. Then the focus is on trees, and after that it is on stacks and queues. So many people are afraid that they will end up with a question on graphs or heap or something, high level data structure like these, but that is not the case. In most interviews, you will actually end up with questions on arrays, strings, linked list, and trees. So even stacks and queues are asked less. So these four data structures, these are the primary focus of interviews. So if you can master these data structures from, you can say, Geeks for Geeks, then you're in good shape for these interviews. And for other things like computer science fundamentals and something, so those you can there are enough resources on the internet on Geeks for Geeks only to learn these resources, to learn about, let's say, operating systems, databases, and something. So even in interviews, these questions are not asked a lot. If you just go through the Geeks for Geeks archive, that's enough. So I think this is most of your prep that you need for these interviews with these companies. And I think the final question that many people were asking was the final year project. Okay, so this project is something. So this is interesting, but now in your final year, previously, before my batch, you had to submit a project. What a project was basically you can make an Android application, an ML algorithm, or anything. If you make any simple product, you will be marked on that. But DTU went ahead and changed the system. So they have made many good adjustments into your curriculum, but I don't think I'm in favor of this one because what they have done is they now ask you to publish a research paper in a journal or in conferences, and even the journals that they ask students to publish their paper in is highly difficult to get in. So, I mean, you can see that the journals that they give O for. So the grading scheme is O, A plus A. Now, how they bracket the paper that you're publishing is that you will get an O by publishing in a research journal that is of high reputation and internationally recognized. And those journals actually, so for writing a paper of that caliber, you will actually end up spending at least 6 months, and then getting a reply from these journals takes another 7 to 8 months if it's a good journal. So this surprise sprang up upon us in our last year. We had only an year, so maybe even less than an year to publish such a paper, and thankfully because of Corona, these requirements have gone down. So even if you publish in an okayish conference right now, you can get an A plus. But the scheme was very difficult before, and publishing in a journal I think is very difficult. So getting an O was extremely difficult, and for that matter, and below that there was A plus. So A plus also was very difficult to achieve. You need to work for at least a year for that. So I mean, I think that the university will relax these requirements after seeing the result of students this year, because earlier getting an A plus was very easy in this BTech project, but right now because of the requirements, there's a lot of scare among students, and because of the stringent requirements, I can say people are very scared of their result right now. So I think with time this will improve, but for the final project, so we need to publish a research paper, and publishing in a journal is very difficult. The other thing that you can do is publish in a conference, and for publishing in a conference also, I think you will need at least 6 to 7 months of good hard work to get published in a good conference that will get you an A plus or A at least. So for that, what you need to do right now is pick a professor. So you actually need to publish a paper. So for publishing the paper, you need help of a professor. And what you can do is, so I don't recommend first years to actually start going to the professors right now. Maybe second years can do it, who are right now maybe who will go into third year. You can actually go ahead to your professors right now, or maybe when your third year starts, you can go ahead to the professors and tell them that we want to work with you, because you will see that in the final year everyone will be running after the professors and they won't have enough slots to pick you guys and help you with your research paper. So instead, if you guys can go to your professors right now and pick any professor that you like. So having a good professor is really important. I unfortunately picked someone who was not very experienced, and I ended up wasting 1.5 year with them. And after wasting that time, my production productivity was nil. So I had to switch to another professor. So picking a good professor is very important, guys. Even if you are an average student, if you have a good professor, your performance will increase a lot. If you are a good student and your professor is not good, you may still end up getting a bad grade. So picking a professor is really important. And so if you're in second year, go ahead, pick a professor and start working with them. Ask them what topics they recommend, and they will give you a good scope or guidance so that you can start working on these projects right now and make these research papers. So more on this can actually be discussed with your professors. But for the final year projects that you guys need to do, I think a good step is actually getting a professor in your second year and start working on it as soon as you can, because what happens is, one, so the biggest issue with this is, even if you spend 6 months and get your paper right, so then you need to do grammar checks and there is plagiarism checks. So your paper is actually checked with all the resources available online to see if you have copied from somewhere, and that ratio of copying to original content should be very low. Okay, so there's a plagiarism check report in which you get how much is the plagiarism in your report, and it is recommended to be at least at 15%. It can be at a maximum of 15%, and when you write these papers, you will realize it's very easy to get a plaque report of similarity which is greater than 15%. Even simple words are marked as plagiarism check under plagiarism. So it takes a lot of time, and after you are done with this, when you send it to a journal or a research conference, it may happen that so firstly they take 2 to 3 months to reply. Conferences for journals, it's actually 8 to 9 months, and after they reply, it may still happen that they do not accept your paper and they reject it. So in which case you need to apply again somewhere else. So that is really frustrating with these conferences and projects. So that is the major issue. So the sooner you guys can start with this, the sooner you can publish something, the better state you guys will be in. So that is my humble request to all you guys. So if you can, then start working on these papers right now and pick a professor. So I think these were the majority of the questions that were asked by people, and I think I summed them up in these 5 to 6 questions. So I think now we can take questions from you guys. So Mehak, can we start taking questions from the people in the conversation right now?
Yes, sir. I think, guys, all of you can ask whatever you want to ask, apart from these questions that he answered. Are there any questions? You can mention it on the chat as well.
Guys, don't be afraid or something. It's just 30 people sitting here discussing something, and so I wish I actually myself had this opportunity to interact with a senior right now. So when I was in my first year, because a lot of so I did not have as such any senior to guide me, and I made some mistakes on my way, which I paid for later. And I hope I had a senior to help me. So I think you guys have a good opportunity right now. Even if you have questions regarding MBA, GRE, further studies, or something like that, it's a good time. I mean, I think to ask, because I mean it's not very obvious when you will get a chance to talk to a senior who can guide you. So if you have any question, don't be afraid. It's just a closed community of a few people. You can ask your questions.
Yes, sir. So I have a question. In your opinion, what is the best time to get an MBA? Right after college or 2 years later? The
Okay,
most
so
common.
talking about this MBA, so is it like from an IIM or abroad?
Uh, Now I'm considering both.
Okay, both. So what about these foreign MBAs? So is it institutes like the M7 colleges or other institutes like in Australia?
No, the top M7 colleges only. But
Okay,
let's see, I'm not very sure right now.
okay. So I think there are two sides to this. So the Indian colleges. So if you think that you can get in, so the advantages of these Indian colleges and the MBA is that you don't have to have a work experience. So for the foreign MBA, you need at least 3 years of good work ex to get into these foreign institutes. Three, and in some cases, if you're exceptional, then 2.5 or two, but 3 years is minimum. So I think for that, if you need to get an MBA, so and for those even 3 years of experience, you need to have a good experience, and there are a lot of factors that go in. Considering your MBA or GMAT or GRE score, and
Yeah.
then what you did in your college and your grades, and then what kind of work that you do in those 3 years. Was it productive? There's a lot of factors. So getting into these M7 colleges might be a little difficult, but
Mm-hmm.
you need to look into a lot of factors, right? So that is one issue with these colleges. But once you get in, the salaries are phenomenal, and I mean, you will reap the benefit of it for your entire life. So that's the gamble that you will play going for a foreign MBA. The Indian MBA are good in the sense that you can get into them without any work ex, or even after 1 year of work ex. So they prefer 1 year of work ex, I think. But even without work ex, you can get into them. And the average salary. So if you guys track the average salary of IM, A, B, and C for general category, it was 35 lakhs right now. So I think that's a really, really good salary if you want to start your career, because in DTU the average salary is around 15 lakh for software development, but in these IIM colleges for consultancy and other things, so the average salary is 35 lakhs, which is way beyond the salary of any graduate of software development, or even after 2 years. If you consider your trajectory 2 years after software development, you will find that 35 lakhs is a really good salary, and even the trajectory beyond uh, after starting with these companies who offer you 35 lakhs is really good. So that is one thing, and I think other institute that you can look into if you want to get an MBA from India is that you can go to ISB. So for
Mm-hmm.
ISB, I mean ISB, I don't. I mean, you can have a comparison between ISB and IIM. So there are a lot of differentiating factors. So ISB is a 1 year course while IIM is a 2 year course. But the fees for ISB is higher than IIM. But then also you get into the workforce in just 1 year. And the teachers that teach there have like international experience. So they are international professors from Harvard or something like that. And even when you join the industry, you will find that you will get some advantage. So for that matter, I think ISB and IIM, it depends on your preference. IIM actually, again, when you get into an IIM, it's highly competitive. You can see that the CAT percentile that you need is really, really high. And even after that, when you get
Yeah.
into these colleges, these IIMs, you will find that the people there are still cramming. So I think we have not really recognized the potential of, I mean, entrepreneurship or working on projects, real life projects, or work experience. You will find that it will still be a little similar to what you're doing in college. Many people cramming their way into good companies, but you'll get an advantage of working on practical things in ISB, and it's basically pay something, get out quick, and start working. So based on your preference, I think you can pick ISB or IIM.
Okay, sir. So we have quite a few questions in the chat box.
All right. Okay. So Kushagra is asking which will be more in demand in future, development or competitive programming. Okay. So Kushagra, I think okay. So this is something that I think I should have addressed. Competitive programming is, it's like a prerequisite to show that you are smart enough, and that when you get into a company you will be quick in grasping concepts. But when you start working in companies, in the end you will only work on something like a web development team or an Android team or an ML team. So when you get into a company, you're not writing competitive programming algorithms there. So for an example, you can say I went to intern in Visa, and the algorithms there. So the work that is done, you're focusing on development of a product. It is okay that you know enough to optimize that product, but the focus is on development of the backend for a company. And competitive programming, or for that matter, a lot of what you are doing right now won't matter at that time. So sorry to tell you guys that, but it doesn't really matter. Competitive programming doesn't matter that much. It will only help you to get into a good company, but after that you are on your own. You will end up working on some software, and competitive programming will no longer benefit you guys. So I don't think there's really a question here. Competitive programming is good only to get into these companies. After that, you need to work on some software only. But I think if you're good in competitive, you will have a good learning curve there. You will end up grasping concepts fast, and you don't need to worry about web or Android development right now that much if you're good at competitive programming. But if you do enjoy web, I think it's good if you can actually learn web or Android right now, because after you get into your job, although you may be a good learner, if you have a good base of how you can make servers and something basic like writing a good code for some backend and front end as well, it will help you. So it's not necessary, but it will end up helping you. So then we have a question from Chandan. He's asking, can we do development and programming side by side? So yeah, Chandan, I think you can do competitive and development side by side. So if you see my profile, I actually have a 6-star rating on CodeChef. On CodeForces, I am a candidate master right now, and I have like an application, 5 applications on Play Store, which have like a total of 200,000 downloads on all the applications combined around the world. I'm earning from that. I even have a website called arnavjindal.in. So that is AARNAVGINDEL.in, and rhvc.in. So I'm a founder, and I'm in the core team of a venture of a startup. So these two websites, I made these two websites as well. So I'm working on competitive programming and development side by side, and you can actually do that. So there's no problem working with these two things side by side. But if you ask me what you should focus on from a job perspective, so that will be, I think, competitive program. So next is from Rishabh. Which one should we choose, Android or ML or both? So Rishabh, I think these are two different things. So Android is basically working on a pure product, so which has a backend, which has a front end, and which people can use. Compare that to ML is basically writing some code, some logic in the backend on solving a particular problem that will be embedded. So the thing with ML is that even if you make an algorithm work on something, it has to be embedded in the backend of an Android application or a website in the end. You cannot directly use an ML algorithm. You need a front end and a way to interact with that algorithm. So, it depends on you. If you're more interested in making things that people can see and people can interact with, so that's what I actually prefer. So, that's why I don't work with ML. I like to make products and I want to see the feedback from people. So, if that is your concern, you can move into Android or web development. If not, if you like to experiment, if you enjoy experimenting with things and working with, ideation and problem solving, then you can move ahead and go into ML. So one more thing about ML is that you need a good understanding of statistics and mathematics. So if you are getting into ML, you need to have a very good base in stats and mathematics, and you will. One more thing is that you need to be ready to learn continuously, because ML is still a growing field, and each day a new research paper is coming out on something or the other. So you need to have that ability to sit down and study 2 research papers or 1 research paper daily. So if you have that in you, then I think ML is a good field. Otherwise, I think Android development or web development is the way to go. Okay, so next is from Garvit. He's asking, where can we learn development concepts in C++ like Lambda expressions in parallel programming? Are they worth the effort? So, Gavit, I don't think you need to get into parallel programming or lambda expressions right now. Based on my experience in interviews, no one asks them. They are something like a high level concept, or I mean, what the interviewers are looking for is that you have experience working in a language. So you don't need to have that much experience with these high level concepts. And the main thing that these interviewers look for in an interview is basically your logical ability. Because when you're working on a product, you are working on a logic, not exactly. You understand, right? So they're hiring you based on your logical ability, not writing some fancy code in a language. So even when you're working on a project, you will see that the code that you write should be understandable to a lot of people. So if the company is hell bent on using lambda expressions, they will let you know and they will teach you that. They won't ask you that in interviews. So I don't think you need to get into learning lambda expressions and these advanced concepts like parallel programming right now. Even I think parallel programming to certain extent you will learn in your course in your third year, and concepts and questions based on parallel programming in interviews are asked only in your fourth year. That also with a very low probability. So even if you skip these concepts right now, it's not that much of an issue. So next is Abhilasha. If we only know C++ right now, how can we move forward? Are there any good projects in C++? Okay, so Abhilasha, in my experience, C++ is like a very basic language, and the libraries to support front-end development or rendering the result of your code is not very good. So if you want to work with something that can have a good front end and that can actually lead to a product in the end which a user can use and interact with. So for that, going forward with Java or Python is important because a lot of frameworks, a lot of libraries, and a lot of development stack is based on either Python or you can say Java. C++ does not have that much to work with, so and I don't think you should worry about language as such because if you have a good understanding of basics in any language, you can easily shift to Java, Python, anything. So I'll give you an example of myself only. So I took I took economics in my 11th and 12th. So I only started working with computers, computer science, and C++ primarily when I came into college. So 3 months I did the course for C++ development, C++ programming, and right after doing that course, I jumped into Android development that was based purely in Java. So although I did not have any understanding of Java, I went directly into working with Java, and I didn't face any issues because I had a good understanding of the basics. So if you want, you can go directly into web development with JavaScript or Python and Java, and for that matter, even Android development. You don't need to be stuck with the language. So I think this is a good point for others as well. Don't be stuck with the language. Language should not be a constraint for working with anything. The only important thing in programming is your logical ability. Rest, anything and everything is available on the internet. If you know the logic behind something, you can search something on the internet. So this is very famous saying or quote in you can say software development that most of the work is done using Stack Overflow. So while you guys work more with, I think, programming, you will see that Stack, everything and anything is available on Stack Overflow. There are a lot of answers to your questions. So you can start working with other languages. But for your question, I don't think there's enough to work with C++. So I'll recommend that you move on to basically Java, Python, or JavaScript. So next is Harsh. He's asking what type of research papers do we have to prepare in the final year, which you talked about. So I mean, what shall be the topic? So Harsh, I don't think there is any restriction on the topic that is there on the research paper. So I worked on a medical problem using ML. A lot of people who are actually into I think electrical branch or even mechanical and physics. So physics I think is another branch that we have. So they work on ML, and I've seen. So most people actually work on ML in some way and so in ML, basically any and everything is a topic for you. If you think you can optimize anything anywhere and create a difference, you can work on that as a project. If not computers, then the scope is, I think I don't have that much experience with the branches like electrical, mechanical, and the others, but I've seen people work on making new devices, making new chemicals, or something, making a new product or compounds. I think I can say that they can research on in their labs, and I think they create prototypes or something, and then they submit these projects. So I mean, the scope is not limited to anything. You can work on anything that you want, and based on your branch, I think your professors will be better able to guide you on this. But yeah, so for the projects, I think as soon as you can do, as you can get started with these projects, the better. So the next is from Vikas, and he's asking, is ML worth doing or is it overhyped? Okay, so I won't be so harsh with ML. It's not overhyped. I think. Okay, so overhyped in the sense that people think that there's a lot of scope in ML. I'm not saying there is not, but the demand for ML that was there 2 to 3 years back has now dried and died as well. So, and the scope for the jobs in ML is more in countries like the United States or somewhere around those countries, like in Europe or in United States. In India, I don't think the scope for data science is that much. So, if you're into ML and you want to get into ML, you will end up having to do an MS in ML from a university abroad and then get a good job. So I think if you can spend some money, so I think MS abroad costs around 1 crore at a minimum. So unless you have a scholarship, so I think if you can spend that much, and if you want to pursue ML, and I mean the returns are also that much. So don't get scared when I say you have to spend 1 crore. After you get a job from the United States, you will end up earning back that 1 crore in, I think, 2 years. The returns are also higher. So if you want to still get into ML, you'll have to get an MS there and then maybe settle there for 2 to 3 years so that you can recoup your money. After that, you're free to go anywhere, and depending on your skills, you can work anywhere. I won't say it's hype, but the demand, I think, that was there 2 to 3 years back has now dried down. So it is not that much. So next is from Puneet. He's asking, what is the level of question asked in interviews, like on a scale similar to code courses? So okay, the thing is that the questions that are asked in competitive programming and in interviews are fairly different. There is some similarity based on the concepts used. So you are using, I think, arrays or strings or something like that. So the basic idea behind similarity between these interviews will be that you will have to use some optimization using stack, queue, or something, or in a hash map in your interviews, and similar optimizations need to be done in you can say these competitive programming websites. So that is where the similarity ends. After that, you will realize that the questions that are asked in interviews, there is no difficulty level in that. So they have a fixed format of questions that they like to ask, and there's no scale as such in those questions. They rate each of those questions exactly equally. So let's say if there's a question on arrays that anyone can solve, they will, and there's a question based on, let's say, hypothetically on graphs that a few people can solve. They can ask those two questions to two different people in the very same interview in the very same round. So, I mean, they don't maintain as such that there should be a uniformity in the level of questions. So, I mean, coming back to the question, you will find that the similarity ends in optimization. After that, anything that you need to do is basically those specific set of questions that the company offers. So, if you're good with optimizing and then you can cram all those questions for the company interview, then I think you are in good shape to sit for the interviews. Uh, Rest, I don't think there's a lot of similarity between competitive programming and these company interviews. Uh, Next is Chandan. He's asking which is better for app development, React Native, Flutter, or Java. So, Chandan, I mean, it depends really, because I don't think React Native is the way to go. React Native, I mean, although there's a good community around native, but the functionalities offered there are limited. And even if you go work with any company, you will find that most of those companies actually are working in Java or Kotlin. So React Native is not the preference if you want to get into Android app development or for that matter iOS development. So React Native, the advantage of React Native is that you can learn one language and then make projects in web, Android app or anything. But React Native I don't think is a very good way to go. Then Flutter or Java. So in Flutter or Java, I don't think I have a preference as such. But even in Flutter, I think the docs are right now limited, and even the work that is done in most of the companies, Flutter is being used somewhere, but it is not extensively used. And since you will end up working in an industry, you have to prepare according to that. So even Java is right now dying out in Android development, so they are all shifting to Kotlin. So if you want, then go into Kotlin development. So Kotlin has a lot of good resources coming up, and Google is putting a lot of effort into Kotlin. So I think Kotlin is the way to go, and so I will say Kotlin, Java, then Flutter. So I mean, this would be the recommendation. Then is Aryan Sharma, how to find good project for Android. Okay, so Aryan, for projects, so this is, I think, it depends on your insight and how you look at things around you. Because what is a good project? Let's say you have a calculator, right? There are probably thousands of calculators that are available on the web, but there are a few calculators that you think or you prefer over the other calculators. So the difference between these calculators is essentially that there is some feature in one calculator or some ease of access in one calculator that is not present in the other, right? That is why people are shifting to that calculator and prefer that, and it has a high rating. So this is something my teacher told me in the first year when I was learning Android development, that anything and everything that you want to develop in Android development will have already been made bit by someone or the else, by someone or the other. There are crores of applications on the Play Store. Everyone has ideas and everyone is trying to implement them. So whatever you're trying to work on, you will find that someone or the other has already developed that application or that concept. So where your advantage comes in is that you use those applications, take two to three top applications, then try to find what is missing in these applications. So pick the top two or three best choices on the Play Store and find what is lacking in those applications, right? And after you can identify that, you can build something similar to those top three applications and then add what is missing in those applications. And after you do that, so that makes a good project for Android. And one thing that I'll recommend you is that if you're trying to make a project for Android, make sure that you have a Play Store ID, because making an Android project is good enough, but if you're posting it on a website on like Play Store, it gives more legitimacy to what you're doing, and it shows that you have some ratings, reviews, and some downloads as well. So I think that is important. So have a good, so whatever you're working with, you might have a few applications, some basic applications like calculator or something that you're working with, and you find that, oh, I wish I had this feature as well, and that would have been good. So try to implement that feature yourself. So I think this is the way of going around developing a good project in Android. So I think this is the last question that we have is by Siddhant, and he's asking, how do I find good open source projects to contribute to as a beginner? So Siddhant, as I said, although I do have knowledge about open source projects, I'm not very well versed with them because I have a particular aversion to these open source projects. I don't enjoy them as much as others do. So for that, I think you might have to contact some other senior who can better recommend some open source projects. So depending, I mean, the only thing that I can tell you is that even if you do a simple Google search, even a simple Quora search, that what are the good Android development projects, web development projects, ML projects that a beginner can go to. So you'll find a good list of by some very good trustable people, and if you start with that list, and if you find that the community around a project there is good enough for you and you're comfortable with it, I think then you can go with it. Otherwise, yeah, and I'll recommend going to someone who has a little more experience with open source projects, so you can connect with people on LinkedIn or even in college when it opens up, and I think that will be a good way to go. So I think those were all the questions. Mehak, I think you can ask people if they have other questions, or I think we can wrap up there.
Sir, I wanted you to tell them the importance of hackathons and ideation and working in teams together.
Okay. So, okay, just a second, guys. Right. So, guys, I mean, a lot of so I had a conversation with Meg, and she told me that many people are working on competitive programming. There's a good competitive programming community growing in Decoder. So, I mean, that's really good. But I think the main purpose of this society was working on hackathons. Now, the main reason for that was all the other societies offer you an opportunity to work with, I think, some tech in some or the other form. The advantage of this society was that we saw that there's a lot of scope on working on holistic development. So while you might be a good developer, when you get into an industry, right, everyone and anyone is just a salesman. If you even if you're a good Android developer, good web developer, if you cannot present your product well, if you cannot sell it well to the consumer, it won't work and you won't get praised. Even if you are a good developer and you have a good understanding of things, if you cannot put it well in a presentation, or someone else gives that presentation for you, then they will get promoted and you will end up being somewhere in the backseat. So this was this the importance of this thing is what we realized in hackathons. So while going to the hackathons, we saw that a lot of times our product was good, but because of lack in presentation skills, we ended up being somewhere in, although in the top bunch, but in the end of the top bunch. So after going through, I think 3 to 4 hackathons, Daisy and other members of the team realized that okay, we need to work on product. We have good products, we have a good team. What we were lacking in was the presentation. So that is when we started working on presentation skills. So in our team, the best people to actually guide you in presentation skills would be Daisy Mehta and Aditya Kulraj Kumar. So I think Mehak can tell you more about these guys and help you connect with these guys anywhere you can. So that is when we realized that there is a lot of importance on working of these soft skills, because if you have these soft skills, they are really important when you get into the industry. So to give you an example, even when you are doing a project, right? When you go for internships, you will end up doing a project, and in there, when your internship is over, you have to give a presentation of the project that you have made or the work that you did. So your hiring for a PPO is based on the project that you do. So let's say that you worked really hard for those 2 months, for those 2.5 months, but you fail to present it well. You fail to tell what you did, how well you did it, and you fail to answer those questions. And even so, I mean, even if anybody says that presentability doesn't matter, let them say it. Even in software companies, presentability matters. If you're standing in front of 10 people, if you're presentable, that leaves a good first impression, and I mean, it helps you along the way during your presentation. And I think it even gives you a lot of confidence, because when you're looking well, when you're dressed up well, I think you get a lot of confidence to present something in front of a lot of people. So now, after you have made that presentation, if you are not good with that presentation, if you cannot justify why that company gave you project for 2 months, if you cannot justify why they gave you that much money and what you did with it, so you won't get a PPO even if you did a good amount of work. And I have seen these cases happen in companies like Google, Microsoft. So I think this is really important that you recognize the importance of these soft skills right now. So and one thing is these soft skills is how you speak, and if you have the ability to stand in front of crowd and address them, so those are important things. Being able to give a good PPT, so that's really really important, because when you're giving a presentation, no one is listening to you. Believe me, no one is listening to you. No one has any idea what you're doing. No one can understand how much work you have done in 3 months. No one can, in just because they have to listen to up to 20 to 30 presentations in a day. They have no idea what you're doing and what it means. The only thing that will that they will remember is how the person looked, how confident was that guy, and what was given in just one line or one word in that PPT. If you can justify in that PPT what you've done, why you deserve the PPO, that is really, really important. So that is why we started this society, because we wanted to focus on development of holistic skills. I mean, holistic development of all the skills. So I really appreciated that you guys are working hard on competitive programming, but you need to work on other skills also, like presentation skills. So I actually had a discussion with Mehak on this, and I mean, came up with some ideas for you guys. I think Mehak will be able to implement them as soon as she gets time. So we have actually thought out something for you guys to improve your presentation skills. The second thing is working in teams. So I think one more thing is that people are working in competitive programming. They don't recognize that there is importance of having the knowledge of a development framework. So even if you have a knowledge of, let's say, competitive programming, you're writing an algorithm, you're performing well in, let's say, whatever XYZ competition. But just because you know some algorithms or you code well, you cannot make a project. You cannot make a product. So when you're going into the industry, your focus will be on making products. So I think if you have understanding of how to make an ML project, working on Android, working on web. So I'm not saying full-fledged development, just something basic like, can you host a static website? Can you host a website that can serve some APIs? Just simple APIs, simple endpoints, something like that. Can you make an Android application that can basically show some data? Can you do something like that? So if you have that much knowledge, even that much, along with competitive programming, that will help you go a long way. And I mean, there's a lot of learning that goes behind learning these frameworks, and it will help you down the line. Even if now, even in the coming 4 years of your college, you don't realize it. Down the line, when you start working in the industry, you will realize that there's a lot of importance to these skills. So even if you're good at competitive programming, I'll recommend that you guys pick up another skill, be it Android development, be it web development, or ML development, IoT development, anything. So I think I'll recommend you guys to pick one of these. So I think the last part of working in this society is that working in teams. So I think a lot of people, I mean, they want to work with like-minded people. That if a few people are good at competitive programming, they want to work with competitive programmers and increase their skills. And I mean, so there's little communities forming within the society who want to work on their particular skills. I mean, on the whole, while that is fine, but I think you need to realize the advantage that you have of being in a college like DTU, because the diversity of people that you have in DTU, I think that is something rare, something that will you will rarely find in other colleges. Barring IITs, I don't think any other college has that much diversity within a college. So you have people ranging from computer science, electrical, mechanical, going up to physics. So there's a lot of people in this university. So while making an application in Android, or for that matter, making a website, it's okay. You can make a product, but you will realize that when you're making a product that is successful in the market, that is actually gaining relevance or is a proper product in the market, it is somewhere lies at the interdisciplinary boundary. You will see that while you have a website, so you need a website or an Android application to give the features or the availability of a product to people. But behind it, there's a lot that goes in, and you cannot just replicate it using a software. You cannot make a software that just solves a problem using an algorithm. If you can use sensors, if you can use, I mean, if you can control sewers using gates that operate using Android applications or IoT, if you can make solar cells that can like, I mean, there's a lot of ideas that you can explore. So working with all these disciplines, so making the cars that you can, making electric cars, or making a car which has a, I mean, solar roof or something or the other. You have so many people from so many diverse backgrounds that you can work with, that you can create products. After which I mean, there are people who in the university made products, and you can get a patent on them. and all your problems of working in a company earning so much are then gone. If you have a good patent, you will eventually get a good salary and a good offer from very good companies like Tesla or something. So they do actually give offers based on if you have patents or something like that. There are a lot of good US companies who will actually pick you up directly. It is not really necessary to get into all the long road of going into NMS, taking a lot of time in the United States. You can get offers directly if you are good at it. So, considering that you have people from 10 plus backgrounds in DTU and all those are present in this society, so Mehak told me that there are people from a lot of disciplines in this society, you have a scope to work on something really great and really diverse. So I think if you pair up with people from different backgrounds, that is one thing, from different branches, I think you can do wonders. The reason I think my team, so the initial team of decoders when we formed the society, why we succeeded is that somewhere someone had a special skill that was particular to that person. Someone was good at development, someone was good at so I was good at, let's say, web development and Android development. Daisy and Aditya were good at presentation skills. uh, Other people were good at competitive programming, so we were able to make a team out of these 4 to 5 disciplines, get them together, and that is when the wonder happened and we won the Smart India Hackathon. So if you guys can do that, then that is really great. So I encourage you guys to actually go ahead, team up with people from different branches, different disciplines, and take advantage of the platform that you have. Because any teams that you make right now, the relationships that you make right now, the connections that you will make right now are something really important and something that you will realize the importance of in later stages of your life. So I think get together with these different people from different backgrounds and do as much as you can, because this is the time and you have a great opportunity right now. So I think Mehak, that answers your
Okay, so
question.
yeah, so thank you so much, sir, for inspiring us and solving all the questions by the juniors and the second years as well. So I hope all of them had a wonderful time with you, and thank you for taking time for us, sir.
Thank you so much, Mehak. Thank you so much for calling me here. And if you guys have any other questions, I think I mean you can connect with me on LinkedIn and you can ask your queries there. All right, chalo, thank.
Okay, sir.
All right.
So shall we end it now?
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thank you, guys. Bye bye.